Well, welcome. We've got a great show for you today. We've got John Waggy going to tell us what's going to happen in those Senate races. I think you'll find that interesting. We've got a report from down on the Gulf. I think you'll find that interesting. A whole lot of stuff going on, and a special miracle that will simply astound you. But there was an amazing moment at the White House Saturday. Pastor Andrew Brunson, held prisoner by Turkey for more than 2 years, was in the Oval Office, and Pastor Brunson prayed for President Trump.
It was a great moment. Well, Trump fought hard for Pastor Brunson's release. He imposed economic sanctions on Turkey and even threatened to break off diplomatic relations with them. And as CBN White House reporter Ben Kennedy shows us, those efforts paid off.
Since taking office, President Trump worked hard to secure Pastor Brunson's release. He was joined by family, friends, and lawmakers in the West Wing here behind me to celebrate his safe return.
From a Turkish prison to the White House in 24 hours, that's not bad.
President Trump welcomed Pastor Andrew Brunson to the White House after spending 2 years as a prisoner in Turkey. The Christian minister said he never lost faith during his imprisonment and even prayed for the commander-in-chief.
We pray for you often.
Thank you.
As a family, my wife and I pray for you.
Thank you. Well, I need it probably more than anybody in this room.
The North Carolina native then knelt in the Oval Office, placed his hands on the president, and asked God to protect Trump.
Lord God, I ask that you pour out your Holy Spirit on President Trump, that you give him supernatural wisdom.
Turkish authorities charge Brunson with terrorism and espionage connected to an attempted coup. Facing 35 years in prison, Brunson denied any involvement during his trial. From the beginning, the American Center for Law and Justice fought for his release.
This has been a very difficult process. It eased somewhat when he was put under house arrest back in July, but he had already been in prison then since October of 2016.
The Trump White House took a tough stance, slapping economic sanctions on Turkey. Then, in a stunning move Friday, a Turkish court sentenced Pastor Brunson to time served and released him. Tony, you were with Pastor Brunson when he landed back home here in the U.S. Walk me through that experience.
The first was the relief when we cleared Turkish airspace. When we were in the plane, the wheels were up and we had cleared that space, and there was a sense that he was going home.
Tony Perkins is president of the Family Research Council and a member of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. He accompanied Pastor Brunson from the courtroom in Turkey all the way back to the U.S. Now, Tony, what message does this send to Christians who are being persecuted all around the world?
Persecuted people around the world gained hope, because they know they're not alone. They know this administration has placed a priority on that.
Pastor Brunson says he now plans to spend time with family and holds no ill will to the Turkish people.
I won't ask you whether or not you're going back to Turkey. I won't ask that question.
We do love Turkey. We were there for 25 years, and we love the Turkish people.
President Trump insisted there was no deal with the Turks for the return of Pastor Brunson and pushed back on reports he agreed to lift sanctions. It's even reported that in August, Trump called for a plan to be drawn up for the removal of all diplomats in Turkey, which would have shattered relations with the NATO ally. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
I love what the president says is there was no deal, no payoff, no money exchanged hands. It was just the power of the United States in the hands of a real fighter. There's a story in history, but I think I'll hold that till later of another president who acted tough. But it's time we get tough. They cannot abuse our citizens. And people who are yearning for religious freedom, they'll now know that the United States will not abandon them. And it was wonderful. The American Center for Law and Justice worked very hard behind the scenes in the legal aspects of this case. But the president, one more time, he's brought somebody home. Well, in other news, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will go to Saudi Arabia to learn more about their alleged role in the disappearance of a Washington Post columnist. Ephraim Graham has more on that.
Pat, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will meet the King of Saudi Arabia. The King denies they had anything to do with the disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi. He entered the Saudi Arabian embassy in Ankara October 2nd, but never came out. The U.S. resident was a contributor to the Washington Post and an outspoken critic of the Saudi government. Turkey and Saudi Arabia are set to conduct a joint inspection today of the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Many fear the journalist is dead. President Trump says if the Saudis are involved, punishment will be severe.
It's being investigated. It's being looked at very, very strongly. We would be very upset and angry if that were the case. There's a lot at stake, and maybe especially so because this man was a reporter. There's something, you'll be surprised to hear me say that, there's something really terrible and disgusting about that if that were the case.
President Trump says he doesn't outright oppose sanctions against Saudi Arabia, but he isn't going to kill an arms deal with the kingdom. The Saudi government denies any involvement with Khashoggi's disappearance and threatened retaliation if any action is taken against them. However, Turkish authorities say the Saudis were involved and they have video to back it up. Pat?
I just want to cool down the temper of those who are screaming blood for the Saudis. Look, these people are key allies. Our main enemy in the Middle East is Iran, and the Saudis stand up against Iran. And I know that Wahhabi faith that they practice is obnoxious, and what they've done in relation to women is obnoxious, and some of their courts are obnoxious. But nevertheless, I don't think on this issue that we need to pull sanctions and get tough. I just think it's a mistake. Behind the scenes, the president can talk to the king and say, look, you've got to cool this thing and get it straightened out. But as he said, we've got an arms deal that everybody wanted a piece of. It's like, what is it, $190 billion? It's huge. And it'll mean a lot of jobs, and it'll be a lot of money coming to our coffers. And it's not something that you want to blow up willy-nilly. So I think the president is playing it right, and he should do it. But we shouldn't jump to some wild conclusions. Well, let's just get those so-and-sos and do it in no way. We haven't got many friends around the world, and we can't offend all of them. Well, President Trump is going down to the hard-hit areas in Georgia and Florida, and let's see what Ephraim has on that.
Pat, President Trump visits Florida and Georgia today to see firsthand the damage from Hurricane Michael. The hurricane has affected millions of lives across a large swath of North Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. The president will fly over some of those areas today. CBN News sent Chuck Holton up in a helicopter to get a bird's-eye view of the damage in the most affected areas, Panama City. Take a look.
Wow, look at that. Ripped the entire roof off of these apartment buildings down here. It's just down to bare plywood, and in some cases the walls are gone. This is really the way to get a sense for the scale and the scope of the damage out here, because it is so much bigger than what you could see just driving around in ground level. As you fly over this thing and you see just how scattered some people's houses are. We've seen several churches that have been very heavily damaged, and we can see now, I'm seeing some power crews that are out trying to work on the lines. There are power poles and lines down everywhere. You got to just imagine the force of the wind that is so strong that it can lift entire buildings over, or as we've seen elsewhere, big boats or even heavy equipment, and in one case, an entire train. What kind of wind would it take to flip over a train? There's going to be a big market for chainsaws out here. There's a house right here with the entire roof gone, and if you can see down into the house, it's going to be obviously quite some time before this place starts to get back to normal, and they're going to need all the help they can get. So I'm Chuck Holton, about 500 feet above Panama City in Florida for the 700 Club.
Devastation unreal. Pat?
Well, my daughter was down in that area with Mercy Chefs. They were trying to feed some people, and she said it's just awful. And these people, some of them have no food and water. They've been forbidden to leave their homes because of electric power that's running loose in the area. But she says they've got to get some federal troops in there. It's just chaos, and nobody seems to know what they're doing. She wasn't very complimentary for FEMA, but I remember in Katrina, FEMA, they weren't assisting. They were a hindrance to everything that was being done. It was unbelievable how they stood in the way of progress, let people starve and not have water, and because they had their little techniques they wanted to follow, and they were hindering the local people. I hope FEMA isn't doing it this badly in Florida, but it sure was bad in Katrina. But nevertheless, my daughter said they need some troops in there because, but these people, somebody has got to rescue them from their homes. They were in these homes, and they're in there starving, and they're dying of thirst. And he said it's just tragic what's down there because all these power lines are running around. But it looks like we could put some military in there with big machines that have big tires that wouldn't be affected by electricity. And we could go house to house and rescue people, but we can't have a human tragedy of that nature. What about the death toll?
Well, Pat, the death toll from the killer storm is now up to 18, and officials fear that number is going to rise. Those who fled, though, are returning to find what's left of their homes. As Caitlin Burke reports, churches weren't spared by the storm, but many are looking beyond their own needs to serve the community.
Residents who fled Florida's panhandle ahead of Hurricane Michael are beginning to make their way back home to see if there is any home left.
It's pretty devastating. Like, everybody we know lost their house. Everybody. And our jobs.
It's a devastation. It's like a bomb just went off here.
In Panama City Beach, Florida, churches are ready to help, even though they weren't spared destruction. Destiny Worship Center lost the side of its kids' building, but that's not stopping them from serving their community. The church is helping to collect and deliver basic necessities to those in need.
What really we're beginning to communicate to take supplies here on the beach level and bring them over into Panama City and Springfield and Callaway, where the churches over there were really destroyed, major damage, and allow them to be collection points to take the supplies that people are giving us and distribute to the people in need.
Just down the road, Lighthouse Church took a more direct hit.
The eye wall of Hurricane Michael came right through this area, and you can see the type of damage that can do. But the folks here at Lighthouse Church say this is not going to stop them from being the hands and feet of Jesus.
Lighthouse Church welcomed all who could make it to worship with them on Sunday.
I think we all know that's just a building. It's just a building. We can build a building, but we want to make sure our community is taken care of. We want to make sure our members are taken care of. We have teams out right now. We have 7 teams running right now with chainsaws and front-end loaders, and we're moving trees and making sure that everybody is accounted for and, that they can get out and they get the aid that they need.
Pastor Cole says that by meeting the basic needs of his community, he's able to pursue them for Christ.
I can tell you I love you all day long, or I can show you that I love you. So our neighbors, if they've ever wondered if we loved them, they're about to find out for sure when they see one of these Dream Team t-shirts on.
We also found Mercy Chefs in Panama City Beach. This ministry can serve up to 18,000 meals a day to victims, volunteers, and first responders.
We'll be able to stand up 3 separate locations around Florida and Georgia as needed. But from those sites, we send food out to different distribution points.
As devastated as this area is, God can be found. Not in the destruction, but in the response. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Panama City Beach, Florida.
The residents of Panama City Beach, Florida say they've never seen a storm like this. Between the power outages and poor roads, many have trouble getting help. So Operation Blessing is bringing it to them.
We just declare right now, Father, that through our hands and through our work, that people are going to be able to meet you and they're going to be able to understand just how amazing you are.
Operation Blessing is responding to the challenge of helping Hurricane Michael victims in Panama City Beach, where one of the worst hurricanes in recorded history struck the Florida Panhandle.
For the last 3 days, we have waited for people to come and cut down trees so we could even go into town to get gas and water and supplies. Our carport's gone, our porch is gone, but you know what? We have a home left, and God is good, and we have been blessed, and we're going to go home and eat this hot food for the first time in 3 days, but I've never seen anything like it, and I was raised here all my life. Just excited that everybody's come together and worked so hard. Somebody that I don't even know is helping them.
By partnering with Lighthouse Church, Operation Blessing is able to bring relief to people who a week ago never expected to be in this position. The need is so great in Panama City Beach and the surrounding areas that Operation Blessing discovered many people did not have transportation to get to a food distribution at a church. So Operation Blessing took the food to them.
Would you guys like a hot meal?
We don't have any transportation except for maybe 4 days or out or something like that. We can't get any. It's a relief and a blessing.
Folks in this apartment complex are still without electricity and running water. So Operation Blessing is doing whatever it takes to get them relief.
The need's going to be for a long time because I've traveled and seen some of the areas here. And it's that way no matter where you go. If you look at the Bible, it's broke down into 2 parts, relationships and love. That's all there is.
And every day, new relationships are formed when volunteers, compelled by love, come out to put faith into action.
It just breaks my heart to see people that are without. I'm a nurse, so I love to take care of people, and so whatever I can do, you know, people are so happy to see you, and they're just so happy to have a meal and know that someone cares, and then even a God bless you to them is just, it makes their day.
And that love is bringing smiles to those people's faces. Pat?
Well, it sure is. Here's some things that are going on. Our convoy of equipment arrived on Saturday. Trucks full of emergency supplies, including bottled water and relief items, a construction trailer filled with tools and equipment for volunteers, a mobile kitchen capable of serving 1,000 hot meals a day, and Operation Blessing's Disaster Relief Fund is in the number to remember, 1-800-700-7000 or cbn.com. Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. So if you want to do something to help people, we're out there helping them right now. And we'll be there as we were. You were down in Metairie just a little while ago, this weekend, I guess, and we stayed. We were the first in and the last to leave.
I drove down on Canal Street, and I still, every time I'm down in New Orleans and I go back and I say, I imagine that the water coming up on Canal Street, and we're staying at the Hilton, which was right on the Mississippi River. And, you know, just to go back and see New Orleans thriving right now, and they had a big win with their Saints over the weekend or last weekend, and that city has just bounced back. So there's hope, but the volunteers are needed right now down in Florida, Pat, because as you saw, the relief efforts are vast. Operation Blessing needs you. Volunteers should meet at the OB Mobile Command Center that's located at Lighthouse Church at 1616 Allison Avenue in Panama City Beach, Florida. That's if you can get to Panama City Beach, Florida. That was Allison Avenue, in Panama City. And volunteers must be 18 years old and be able to get transportation to and from the work site. And for more questions about volunteering, call the number on your screen, 1-800-677-7974, or you can go to ob.org. Between Hurricane Florence and Michael, the last few weeks have had their share of extreme weather, and it looks like there's more on the way. Ephraim Graham has the latest on that.
Well, Wendy, winter weather has arrived early for several states across the U.S. Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota saw as much as 6 to 12 inches of snow. The Northeast also saw its first snowfall over the weekend, with temperatures in Vermont dipping to about 30 degrees. Weather officials have been calling for a colder than usual winter. Get ready. Pat, back to you.
Well, I had Joe Bastardi, meteorologist, who's here with us the other day. He's going to be on tomorrow. He's predicting a very stormy winter coming up. It'll be really tough, and we're going to tell you all the details because it's time to get ready. It's not a game. So they talk about global warming. Well, it's going to be global cooling big time, according to Joe. He's going to give us the science of it, and he predicted when that hurricane, by the way, was coming. He knew a big one was coming in the Gulf. He talked about it. And he's also got the science about how come it's going to get cold. But, folks, as I said yesterday, hold on to your fur coats because it's going to get powerful cold. And already, think of that massive snowstorm out in the central
I
part.
know. And remember, you know, the blizzard of 2018 we had here in Virginia Beach. You know, everybody was shut down for 2 days.
That's right.
It's crazy.
More's coming, so I hope your winter arrives.
Oh, yeah, hold on to your hat. All right.
Well, you tune in tomorrow. You'll see our interview with Joe, and you'll hear his scientifically based prediction about what's coming up, and we'll give you some tips about how you can get ready for it.